I retired and bought a cabin in the woods so I could finally be alone with nature. No noise, no people, just the wind in the treetops. Then my son-in-law called and said, "My parents are moving in with you. If you don't like it, come back to the city." I didn't say anything, but I left a surprise that would turn their lives upside down. The keys felt heavier than they should have. I stood in Rebecca Marsh's real estate office in Cody, holding them while she stapled documents I'd already forgotten. Outside the window, March wind pushed tumbleweeds across the parking lot. "Congratulations, Mr. Sullivan." Rebecca smiled like she'd handed me the world. Maybe she had. "You're officially a property owner in Park County." The cashier's check, $215,000, had left my account that morning. 40 years of overtime shifts, skipped vacations, packed lunches. 4 decades compressed into 6 figures, now converted into 800 square feet of timber and solitude. 2 hours west of Cody, pavement gave way to dirt roads. My new cabin sat 12 miles from civilization, surrounded by pine forest thick enough to block cell signals. Elk grazed in the clearing as I pulled up. The cabin was exactly as the photos promised. Weathered cedar logs, green metal roof, stone chimney. Small, yes, but mine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like pine sap and old wood smoke. I unloaded the truck methodically. Tools on the pegboard above the workbench. Hammer, wrenches, handsaw, each in its designated spot. Books stacked on the shelf by subject. Coffee maker positioned where morning light would hit it first. Every item placed with intention. By the time I finished, the sun was lowering. I made coffee and carried it to the porch. The rocking chair I'd bought specifically for this moment creaked under my weight. I called Emma. "Dad." Her voice came through bright. "Are you there? Did you get it?" "Signed the papers this morning," I said. "I'm sitting on the porch right now watching elk. I'm so proud of you. You earned this. 40 years. 40 years I dreamed about mornings where I'd drink coffee and watch wildlife instead of highway traffic. You deserve every moment of peace." She paused. "Derek has been so stressed with work lately. Sometimes I forget what peaceful even looks like." Something in the way she said it made me pause. "Everything okay?" "Oh, fine. You know how it is. When can I visit?" "Anytime, honey. You know that." We talked for another 10 minutes. When we hung up, I sat watching the sun paint the mountains orange and purple. The phone rang an hour later. My parents lost their house. Derek didn't bother with hello. His voice had the flat tone he used for conference calls, but underneath it, I heard desperation. "They're 68 and 71. My dad's diabetes medication costs $900 a month. They need to stay with you until they find a place." My hand tightened on the armrest. "Wait, what?" "Derek, I just bought this place." "For a few months, or maybe you'd prefer they live in their car." "What happened to their house?" Silence. Then, "My father made some bad investments. Look, Marcus, I was laid off 6 months ago. The severance ran out. Emma's salary doesn't cover 3 people, let alone 5. I'm trying to hold everything together." I could hear the genuine stress, but something felt wrong. The way he'd moved from asking to demanding in one breath. "I understand financial pressure, Derek. I worked through 3 recessions, but this is my retirement." "Then you should have stayed in Denver. Friday morning, I'll text you their arrival time." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone. My knuckles had gone white on the armrest. I forced myself to release it, flex my fingers, breathe. That night, I sat at the kitchen table holding Sarah's photo, the one from our last good day before the diagnosis. We're on a hiking trail in Rocky Mountain National Park, her smile bright despite the fatigue she tried to hide. "I bought the cabin, Sarah," I whispered to the empty room. "Just like we planned, but you're not here to see it." The mountains outside were beautiful and utterly indifferent to my grief. 5 years I'd spent planning this retirement. 2 years I'd spent alone, learning to wake up without her. And now, 3 days into my dream, someone was trying to take it away. I'd failed to save her from cancer. I wouldn't fail to save Emma from her own husband. I picked up my engineering notepad and began writing. Not emotional venting. Questions. Timeline estimates. Resource assessments. The cabin keys sat on the table beside my notepad. An hour ago, they'd meant freedom. Now they meant something else entirely. 40 years I'd been the reasonable one, the peacemaker, the man who swallowed inconvenience to keep family peace. Not anymore. Dawn found me still at the table. My notepad had grown dense with lists, diagrams, questions. I made fresh coffee and studied my notes. Then I drove back to Cody. The Yellowstone Ranger Station sat 20 minutes west. Inside, a ranger looked up from his desk. "I just moved up from Denver," I said. "Bought a place off County Road 14. What about wolves? I've heard they're back." "Reintroduction's been successful." He moved to a wall map. "They're usually shy, but they've got incredible sense of smell. Can detect prey from miles away. I want to be prepared." "Smart." He handed me a pamphlet. "Keep your property clean. Don't leave attractants out unless you want visitors." I took careful notes. Wind direction, pack territories, seasonal behavior. I thanked him warmly. Mentioned I was from Denver and still learning. Every word calibrated to sound naive, concerned. Back in Cody, I found an outdoor supply store. The camera section sat between hunting equipment and security systems. "Looking for wildlife cameras," I told the clerk. "Want to monitor bear activity?" He showed me 2 models with motion activation, night vision, night, cellular connectivity. "These will do you right." $340. I paid cash. At the cabin that afternoon, I installed them methodically. One covering the driveway approach, one angled toward the front porch. I tested the motion sensors, checked signal strength, adjusted positions until the coverage was perfect. Both cameras connected to my phone with 1 bar of service. Weak, but functional. Thursday morning, I drove to a butcher shop on a side street in Cody. "Need 20 pounds of beef scraps," I said. "Organ meat, fat trimmings." The butcher didn't blink. "You got it." $45 for meat wrapped in white paper. The smell was immediate and powerful. Blood, fat, raw flesh. Thursday afternoon, I stood in the clearing behind my cabin. The wind came from the west. I walked 30 yards from the structure, upwind, and placed the meat in 3 piles. Not random. Calculated. Close enough to draw predators, far enough that they'd focus on the piles, not the building. I wasn't trying to endanger anyone. I was trying to educate them. Back inside, I locked windows, turned off unnecessary power, set the thermostat to minimal heat, protecting my investment while setting my trap. The drive to Denver took 5 hours. I arrived at my old house just before midnight, the suburban place I hadn't yet sold. I set up my laptop in the living room, propped my phone where I could watch the camera feeds. Then I waited. Friday morning at 10 o'clock, a sedan appeared on my phone screen. Frank and Barbara emerged, looking around with expressions I recognized. Displeasure, judgment. The camera microphone picked up their voices. "This is where he's living now?" Barbara wrinkled her nose. "It smells like pine and dirt. At least it's free." Frank walked toward the cabin. "We'll stay a few months. Let Derek figure out the next step." "I don't see why we had to come." Barbara stopped, froze. "Frank, wolves." 3 shapes emerged from the tree line, gray and brown, moving with cautious purpose toward the meat piles. Not aggressive, not interested in humans, just hungry. Frank saw them, turned white. "Get in the car. Get in the car now." They ran. Barbara stumbled, recovered. Car doors slammed. The engine started and gravel sprayed as they reversed wildly, then accelerated down the driveway. The wolves, unbothered, continued toward the meat. I closed the laptop and picked up my coffee, took a slow sip. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "What did you do?" Derek's voice had lost its businesslike edge. Now it was just fury. "My parents nearly got attacked." "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I warned you this property is in the wilderness. You set this up. You baited those animals." "Derek, I live in wolf country. Wolves live here. This is their home. Maybe you should have asked before assuming you could use mine." "You're insane. I'm going to—" "You're going to what? Sue me because wildlife exists on my property? Good luck with that. This isn't over." "No," I said. "It's just beginning." I pressed end call and opened the footage again, watched the wolves finish the meat and disappear back into the forest. 2 weeks passed before Derek made his next move. I spent those days settling into my routine: coffee at dawn, watching elk, reading books I'd postponed for decades. But the peace felt conditional now. Mid-April, Emma called. "Dad, please." Her voice broke. She was crying. Derek showed me the footage of the wolves. That could have been so much worse. I set down my axe and walked to the porch. "Emma, honey, wolves live in these mountains. I warned Derek this wasn't appropriate housing. But you knew they were coming. You could have done something to make it safer." The script was obvious. Every phrase sounded coached. My daughter turned into his messenger. "I bought this property for solitude," I said, keeping my voice level. "No one asked if I was willing to host guests, but I'm willing to meet with Frank and Barbara to discuss options." "You are?" Hope flooded her tone. "Really?" "I'll meet them in town, neutral ground. We'll talk." 2 days later, I drove to Cody for the meeting. I'd spent both evenings preparing, researching rental prices, printing a standard short-term rental agreement, reviewing property law basics. The Grizzly Peak Cafe sat on Main Street. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose my position carefully. Table near the window, back to the wall, clear view of the entrance. I ordered black coffee and waited. Frank and Barbara arrived exactly on time. They sat down across from me like I'd summoned them to court. "Hello, Frank. Barbara, would you like coffee?" Frank ignored the question. "Marcus, this has gone on long enough. We need those keys today." "We're not here for coffee," Barbara added. "We're here because family is supposed to help family." I pulled the rental agreement from my folder and slid it across the table. "I agree, which is why I've prepared a proposal." Frank glanced down, then back up, his face reddening. "A rental agreement? You're charging us rent?" "Market rate for a furnished property. $1,200 monthly, 6-month lease, standard terms." "You want money from your own family?" His voice climbed. Other patrons glanced over. "From people who have nowhere to go?" Barbara leaned forward. "I never thought you were this kind of person, Marcus. Greedy. Just plain greedy." I stood, collected my folder. "Then I guess we don't have an agreement. You'll need to find alternative housing. Good afternoon." In the truck, I sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing steadily. Then I started the engine and drove home. That evening, my phone became a weapon. 3 calls in 2 hours. Cousin Linda, a former colleague, then Emma, all with the same message. Derek was worried about my mental state. The narrative was already being written. The last call was Emma again. "You embarrassed them." Not crying now. Angry. "In public? What were you thinking?" I offered them a fair solution. They rejected it. "A rental agreement, Dad. Their family. And this is my home. My retirement. My one place of peace, which I bought with money I saved for 40 years. Derek was right. You've changed. You've become someone I don't recognize." The words landed like she'd meant them to, I kept my voice quiet, controlled. Maybe I have, or maybe everyone else has, and I'm just finally noticing. The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand, watching darkness settle over the mountains. 3 calls in one evening, all saying the same thing. Marcus Sullivan is unstable, dangerous, unreasonable. Derek wasn't trying to take the cabin anymore. He was trying to destroy my credibility first, make me seem incompetent, turn the family against me so no one would believe my version of events. I opened my laptop and began typing. Mr. James Parker, attorney at law. I sent the email at 9:47 that night. Careful words, factual language. I needed legal advice regarding family pressure over property ownership, potential claims, asset protection. Morning came with an email waiting. James Parker had responded at 7:15. He could meet Thursday afternoon at his office in Cody. Fee structure, $300 per hour. I confirmed immediately. For the next 3 days, I organized documentation. Property deed in one folder, purchase documents in another, family tree diagram, written timeline of events starting with Derek's first call, transcripts of key phone conversations from my detailed notes, the rental agreement Frank had rejected. By Thursday morning, I had a leather portfolio case packed with evidence as solid as any foundation I'd ever engineered. James Parker was 50-something, Wyoming weathered, with the direct manner of someone who'd grown up on a ranch before law school. His office had wooden furniture, law books, framed degree from University of Wyoming. I presented my documentation in sequence. Parker took notes, asked clarifying questions. I had answers prepared. Mr. Sullivan, this is the most organized intake I've seen in years. You've documented everything. 40 years in construction engineering. Documentation prevents disputes. In this case, it's going to protect you significantly. He leaned back. Here's my assessment. Your son-in-law is attempting to establish grounds for claiming you're incompetent. The smear campaign, the stories about dangerous behavior. These are preliminaries to a potential conservatorship claim. Conservatorship, taking away my legal rights. The solution is to prove conclusively that you are managing your affairs competently, which is what we're doing right now. What's the next step? Revocable living trust with an independent trustee. I'll be frank, it'll cost about $4,000 in legal fees, but it makes you essentially untouchable. The trust owns the property, not you personally. Family pressure becomes legally meaningless. Do it. How soon? 2 weeks. I'll draft the documents. You'll review and sign. After that, your property is protected. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When I left, I felt clearer than I had in weeks. Wednesday evening, my phone rang. Emma. Dad. Her voice sounded exhausted. I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm exhausted. I understand, honey. Derek is so stressed. He's been trying to help his parents ever since Frank lost all that money. I went very still. Lost money? What happened? Oh, you didn't know? Frank was gambling online. Lost $31,000 over 6 months. That's why they lost the house. 31,000. The number hung in the air. That's substantial. No wonder Derek has been under pressure. Yeah, and he keeps talking about solutions, about reorganizing family assets. She was talking faster now. He mentioned putting your cabin in a family trust so it could benefit everyone. For estate planning. And the property value is probably already up since March. Every word was a piece clicking into place. That's an interesting idea, I said carefully. When did Derek suggest this? A few weeks ago. He said it would be good for tax purposes when you... well, in the future. I'm consulting an attorney this week, just to make sure everything's proper. An attorney? Her voice sharpened. Dad, is that necessary? At my age, with property worth this much? Yes, it's the responsible thing to do. After we hung up, I added 6 pages of notes to my documentation. Frank's gambling. Derek's scheme disguised as estate planning, the timeline of desperation driving aggression. 2 weeks later, I drove to Parker's office for the trust signing. The documents waited on the conference table. 43 pages total, each signature line flagged. I read every page. The revocable living trust designated Parker as independent trustee. Total assets, $340,000. The cabin, my retirement funds, everything I'd built in 40 years. The critical provision sat on page 17. Emma Sullivan inherits only if divorced from Derek Morrison or if Derek Morrison signs a legal waiver of claims to the property. This provision, Parker said. The conditional inheritance. You understand this might create conflict? The conflict already exists. This just protects her from being exploited through my property. If Derek discovers this, he'll react aggressively. Let him. Everything here is legal. My signature was steady on every page. The notary applied her seal with practiced precision. I wrote a check for $4,000 and left with copies in a sealed envelope. The rest of that week, I worked through my financial institutions methodically. Changed all beneficiary designations to my revocable living trust, ensuring Emma would inherit. But Derek couldn't claim anything directly. Each institution noted that I made these changes voluntarily with legal counsel. By Friday, every asset I owned was protected within the trust structure. But I wasn't done yet. Following Parker's advice, I drove to the public library. I chose a corner computer terminal and accessed Colorado property records, databases I'd navigated before during my engineering career. I entered Emma and Derek's address and downloaded their mortgage history. The information hit me like cold water. 8 months of missed payments, $21,000 in arrears. Notice of default dated 3 weeks ago. My hands didn't shake, but they wanted to. I printed the documents, added them to my folder, drove back to the cabin in silence. That evening, I called Parker from the porch. James, I found something. My daughter's house is 8 months behind on mortgage payments. She doesn't know. How much in arrears? $21,000. A long pause. Marcus, they're past the threshold. The bank could move to foreclosure sale within 60 days. What can I do? There's an option. Banks sell defaulted loans to investors at discount. If you could acquire the debt before foreclosure, you'd become the creditor. You'd control the terms. I looked out at the mountains. How would that work? I'd contact the bank through an intermediary LLC. Make an offer to purchase the debt, typically 70 to 85 cents on the dollar. The bank gets immediate recovery. You get leverage, and your daughter doesn't lose her home. Derek would know I did it. Not necessarily. The LLC hides beneficial ownership. He'd only know the debt was sold to a private company. How fast can you set this up? If the bank is motivated? 2 weeks? Do it. While Parker worked on the debt purchase, I kept my hands busy. Between legal meetings, I built a bookshelf, something tangible, when everything else felt uncertain. The physical work was meditative, quieting the anger with each pass of sandpaper over wood grain. I met a rancher named Tom Blackhorn who taught me that wounded animals always go for the throat. I made sure to protect mine. Through Parker's investigation, I learned Derek had been excellent at his job. Regional sales director, top performer for 8 years. Then the corporate merger. Laid off at 53, severance barely lasting 6 months. His resume went to 200 companies. 12 interviews. 0 offers. Too experienced, they said, meaning too expensive, too old. His father's gambling debt became his inheritance. His wife's teacher salary couldn't carry 3 people. Desperation turned to anger, turned to schemes. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But drowning men don't get to pull others under. Late May, I was repairing the porch railing when Derek's car came fast up the driveway, spraying gravel. He jumped out, didn't close the door properly, stormed toward me. I calmly set down my tools, retrieved my phone, started recording video. I stood at the top of the porch steps, 6 stairs up, elevated position. Derek, you're on my property, uninvited. I'm recording this conversation. I don't care about your recording. His face was red, movements aggressive. You set up some legal scheme to steal from your own daughter. The trust protects my assets and ensures Emma inherits appropriately. It's completely legal. Appropriately? What does that mean? Unless she divorces me? That's what you really want, isn't it? The trust ensures my property isn't subject to claims by third parties. That's standard estate planning. Third parties? I'm family. You're my daughter's husband. You have no legal claim to my property. The trust simply formalizes that reality. His voice climbed higher. We'll see about that. I'll contest this. I'll make sure you never see Emma again. You're threatening to isolate my daughter from me because I protected my own property. That's interesting. For the record, this isn't over. Then leave my property now, or I'll call the sheriff for trespassing. He stormed back to his car. The engine roared. Gravel sprayed as he reversed and sped away. I stopped recording, reviewed the footage immediately. Faces visible, audio clear, threats documented. I uploaded it to cloud storage and emailed a copy to Parker with subject line, Evidence, Hostile Confrontation. That evening, Parker's response came within an hour. Continue documenting everything. Consider medical evaluation to preempt competency challenges. Expect retaliation. I called Dr. Michael Rivera's clinic the next morning and scheduled an appointment. When I arrived, I explained directly. I'm 67, own property, and want baseline medical documentation proving my competency. Dr. Rivera understood immediately. I've encountered situations like this before. Adult children challenging parents' competency to gain control of assets. Can you provide a detailed written assessment? Absolutely. The examination took 90 minutes. Cognitive tests, memory recall, physical exam. When finished, Dr. Rivera typed notes at his computer, then printed a letter on clinic letterhead. Mr. Marcus Sullivan is mentally competent, physically healthy, and fully capable of managing his own affairs. Patient is alert, oriented, and cognitively intact. No signs of dementia, confusion, or diminished capacity. 240. I paid by credit card and filed the letter with my legal documents that same afternoon. 2 days later, I was organizing tools when an unfamiliar sedan pulled up. A professional-looking woman in her 40s emerged carrying a tablet. Mr. Sullivan, I'm Sarah Collins from Adult Protective Services. I'm here regarding a complaint filed about your welfare. The flash of anger was immediate, but I kept my expression neutral. A complaint by whom? I can't disclose that. May I come inside? Of course. Would you like coffee? No, thank you. Standard welfare check. I let her inside, door held open. I should tell you up front. I'm involved in a property dispute with family members. I suspect this complaint is part of that conflict. I appreciate your honesty. I'll conduct my assessment, objectively. Sarah walked through the cabin with her tablet, documenting everything. Kitchen clean, bills paid and filed systematically, refrigerator stocked, bathroom tidy, no safety hazards. Do you have difficulty managing daily tasks? No difficulty. I manage everything independently. The complaint mentions concerns about your mental state. I retrieved the folder from my desk. I had a comprehensive medical evaluation 2 days ago specifically to address this. She read Dr. Rivera's assessment carefully. This is very thorough. Most people don't have current medical documentation. I anticipated false allegations. I wanted evidence ready. That's quite strategic thinking, Mr. Sullivan. I also provided bank statements showing responsible financial management and copies of my trust documents proving sophisticated estate planning. 3 days later, official notification arrived. Adult Protective Services case closed. Complaint determined unfounded. Sarah's report stated clearly, subject, is competent, living independently and safely. Complaint appears motivated by family property dispute rather than genuine welfare concerns. No further action warranted. I filed everything systematically in a folder labeled APS False Complaint, Evidence. But Parker's next call changed everything. Marcus, I found something. Frank and Barbara have been using your cabin address. Public records show mail being sent there in their names. Using it how? Wyoming Department of Family Services, Social Security Administration. This could be mail fraud. We need to investigate. I drove to the mailbox immediately, pulled on gloves before opening it. 3 envelopes, all addressed to Frank Morrison or Barbara Morrison at my cabin address. I photographed each carefully, then placed them in a plastic evidence bag. Parker answered on the first ring. James, I found mail, 3 pieces. Don't open them. This is benefits fraud. They're receiving mail from social services, and they've probably opened a bank account using your address. Your camera footage proves they don't live there. That's a federal crime. Mail fraud, benefits fraud. Years in federal prison if prosecuted. I looked at the evidence bag on my kitchen table. Then we report it. Marcus, once we file a criminal complaint, I'm not covering for criminals. They crossed a line. Understood. I'll contact the U.S. Attorney's Office. This changes everything. Once federal charges are filed, their credibility is destroyed. The next week moved quickly. I compiled evidence. Security camera footage showing Frank and Barbara's single brief visit in March, utility bills proving no additional occupants, the mail records, my sworn statement. Parker forwarded everything to Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Chen in the Economic Crimes Division. Chen called 3 days later. Mr. Sullivan, Attorney Parker provided compelling evidence. How long has mail been arriving? Based on postmarks, since February. The mail forwarding request was dated February 15th, 2 weeks before I even closed on the cabin. My son-in-law had given them my address before I owned it. That establishes pattern. We have sufficient evidence for federal investigation. I'll be frank, this will likely result in criminal charges. I'm not trying to ruin their lives, but I won't allow my property to be used for fraud. You're doing the right thing. We'll handle it from here. While the federal investigation proceeded, Parker finalized the debt purchase. 3 weeks after our initial conversation, he called with news. The bank accepted our offer. Mountain Holdings LLC, that's your entity, will own Derek and Emma's mortgage for $101,000. The original balance was $95,000 plus $21,000 in arrears. Total debt, $116,000. We got 13% discount. Numbers clicked into focus. So I own their house debt now? Effectively, yes. Derek will receive notification that the loan was sold, but he won't know you're behind it. You control whether they keep the house or face foreclosure. When does this become official? Paperwork finalizes Friday. After hanging up, I walked out to the porch and sat in my rocking chair. A bull elk grazed in the clearing, massive antlers catching afternoon light. I'd just bought my daughter's home out from under her husband. The notification arrived at Derek and Emma's house the following Monday. Derek called at 11 p.m. screaming, "What did you do?" "Our mortgage was sold to some company called Mountain Holdings. Did you do this?" I kept my voice neutral. "Why would I know anything about your mortgage, Derek?" "Because this happened right after you set up that trust. You're behind this somehow." I retired to Wyoming, not to Colorado Mortgage Finance. If your loan was sold, that's between you and your bank. I'm going to find out. I'm going to prove you did this. When you do what, Derek? What exactly are you threatening? Silence. Then, quieter. You're destroying this family. No, I'm protecting what's mine. There's a difference. He hung up. The months passed. Summer turned to fall. The federal investigation continued its methodical pace. I spent my days in the routine I'd originally sought. Coffee at dawn, reading, watching wildlife. But everything felt suspended, waiting for resolution. In September, Parker discovered something else. Derek had racked up another $14,000 in credit card debt since March. Cash advances, online transfers to offshore gambling sites. He was following his father's pattern, making the same mistakes. Emma needs to know, Parker said. Soon. I sat on my porch that evening and made my decision. I pulled out my phone and typed, "Honey, we need to talk. Can you come to the cabin this weekend? Just you. It's important." Her response came 10 minutes later. "Is everything okay? You're worrying me. Everything's fine with me, but there are things you need to know about your financial situation. Things Derek hasn't told you." "What things?" "Dad, you're scaring me. Not over text, in person. Saturday afternoon, I'll make lunch." A long pause. Then, "Derek has a work trip this weekend. I can come Saturday." "Okay, I'll be there around noon." Saturday arrived with clear skies and cold wind. I'd set lunch on the porch. Chicken salad sandwiches, iced tea, the mountains as backdrop. Emma's car appeared at 11:50. She emerged looking thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. She hugged me, but there was tension in it. "Dad, what's this about?" No preamble. "Your text scared me." I handed her the folder without a word. Bank statements, mortgage default notices. Derek's credit card charges, gambling sites, cash advances, the pattern unmistakable. 8 months of lies, documented in columns and numbers. She read slowly. I watched color drain from her face. "Your house is 8 months behind," I said quietly. 21,000 in arrears. Derek has been gambling online, the same pattern Frank followed. Your mortgage is in foreclosure proceedings. No. Her hands shook holding the papers. Derek wouldn't. He handles our finances. He said everything was fine. Everything isn't fine. It hasn't been fine since March. She looked up, and I saw the moment hope died in her eyes. "How long have you known?" "Weeks. I wanted to tell you, but I needed proof before destroying your marriage. You had to see it yourself." Tears came then, silent ones she tried to hide by turning away. I let her have the moment. "There's more," I said when she turned back. "I bought your mortgage debt through an LLC. I own it now. I did it to protect you from foreclosure." Her eyes went wide. "You... what? How can you even..." "Banks sell defaulted loans. I made an offer through an intermediary company. As of 6 weeks ago, I'm your creditor." "Does Derek know?" "He knows the loan was sold. He doesn't know it's me. He's going to lose his mind." "Probably. But Emma, you need to understand why. I've set up a trust. Everything I own goes to you, but only if you're divorced or if Derek signs away all claims. I won't let him use you to get my property. He told me you were losing your mind." Her voice was hollow. "That you needed help. That isolation was making you paranoid." I believed him. She wiped her eyes. "I chose him over you. You chose your marriage. That's what you're supposed to do. Not when it's built on lies." She looked at the folder again. "What do I do now?" "That's your decision. But Derek isn't going to change. When men like him are cornered, they get desperate. And desperate men use people." Emma was quiet for a long moment, staring at the mountains. Finally, "Mom would know what to do. Your mother would tell you what she told me when I wanted to quit engineering after a project failed. Don't let one mistake define 40 years of good work. Marrying Derek wasn't a mistake. You loved him. Leaving him isn't failure. It's course correction. Can I stay here tonight? I need to think. Always. This will always be your home too." She nodded, picked up her iced tea with shaking hands, and we sat in silence watching elk graze in the clearing below. It wasn't the reunion I'd hoped for, but it was honest, and honesty was the only foundation worth building on. Epilogue. 6 months later, Emma signed divorce papers in November. Derek contested nothing. Parker made sure the terms were clear. Sign away all claims to Marcus's estate, or Mountain Holdings LLC proceeds with foreclosure. Frank and Barbara's federal convictions made Derek's position impossible. His attorneys advised immediate settlement. Derek signed. Frank and Barbara pleaded guilty to mail fraud and benefits fraud in October. 18-month supervised probation, $28,000 in restitution, permanent ban from federal benefit programs. Frank's stroke during probation left him in a rehabilitation facility. Barbara lives there too now, paying bills with what remains of their savings. Marcus forgave Emma's mortgage debt the day her divorce finalized, $95,000 erased with a signature. She moved to Cody in December, bought a small house with money she'd kept separate from Derek, close enough to visit her father every weekend. They sat on Marcus's porch one Saturday morning in May, watching elk graze in the clearing. Emma was quieter now, healing in the silence her father had sought. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she finally said. Marcus took her hand. "I'm your father." Giving up was never an option. The mountains stood silent, witness to promises kept.